2015, we did some research into what's the impact of Stilt loans. And one thing we saw was that we added $200 million worth of lifetime income to folks who used our loans to do something that allowed them to earn money for the rest of their lives. International graduate students not able to pay tuition or something like that. Their parents don't have money, or their parents are not able to send them money, and now they're stuck. So because of that, because of our loan, these people graduated and actually found a job because they got the right visas. And because of that, now they will continue to earn money for the rest of their lives if they choose to stay in the US.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Podium Stories. Today we have a very special guest. His name is Rohit. He's the CEO and co-founder of Stilt, a company that focuses on providing loans and financial services to the immigrants and the underserved. Stilt, backed by Y Combinator, has raised multiple funding rounds from prominent VCs. I think there's something here that is going to be very interesting for you guys to hear more about. As an immigrant myself, this kind of resonates personally, so I want to bring in Rohit to talk more about it. Rohit, thank you so much for being here and joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Excited to be here and happy to chat about Stilt and what we are building.
Absolutely. So before we get into your journey and how Stilt came to be, can you give us the elevator pitch for Stilt? So for the audience that maybe is not familiar with what you guys are working on, with what you guys are building, give us a 30-second, 1-minute elevator pitch that I'm sure you have.
Yeah, sure. So hey, everyone. I'm Rohit. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Stilt. And Stilt is a fintech company focused on immigrants. We define our company's mission is to be to make immigrants successful in the US. And the way we are doing it is by providing them high quality and affordable financial products. Generally, when you move to the US, in the first 5-6 years, you don't have enough credit history or credit score, or you don't have family here. And it's very difficult for immigrants to access credit. They are systematically discriminated by the US financial system. And I actually also went through this similar experience, but more or less, we help immigrants with affordable financial products, even if they have none of these things. And as of today, Stilt has given hundreds of millions of dollars in loans to tens of thousands of immigrants who have moved to the US from 160 different countries. I didn't even know the names of these many countries, but we have helped a ton of immigrants with our unsecured personal loan product. So the process is they come to the site, fill out a loan application, and we send them a decision pretty quickly. And then we transfer the money to their US bank accounts. And immigrants can use this money for anything that they want, including paying for rental deposit, buying a car, sending money to family back home, or just getting set up and building a new life in the US. So we help them give an on-ramp to the US financial system. And then we report all that data to credit bureaus. So immigrants build credit history faster so they can also access financial products from other companies. So that's what we've been building for the past 5 years. We went through Y Combinator. And as you mentioned, we have raised a couple rounds of equity funding, hundreds of millions of dollars in debt capital. And we are now a team of about 35 people working in the US and remotely, like everyone else, building great products for immigrants.
I love that. That's great context. Before we come to talk more about Stilt and the origin story and how it came to be, I also want to talk to you about, or ask you about your background. So before even Stilt becomes a picture in your mind, who is Rohit, right? Like, what's your background? Where did you grow up? Give us a bit more of the story before this was the company that you were running.
Yeah, totally. So I'm originally from India, and I grew up in a place called Ghaziabad, which is close to Delhi. So it's in the national capital region. But I went to Delhi College of Engineering for my undergrad, graduated from there, and then I went and worked in Germany, coincidentally. And my undergrad was in industrial engineering. So I had nothing to do with finance in the early days. So I was working at a company called ThyssenKrupp. You see a lot of elevators and escalators from them. They're the world's third largest steel manufacturer. So I was working in the corporate office of that steel manufacturing division trying to just use data analytics to help them improve the quality of manufacturing. That was during recession time, so I could not stay in Germany. So I went to London, and I worked in London for a little while before deciding to move to the US for my master's at Columbia. So that's where I first got into finance, or I first got to know about finance. So graduating from Columbia, I learned a ton about financial markets, not necessarily credit. But after I graduated, I worked at a company called Argus, which is a consultant to all the major banks in the US. So did that for a couple of years, built credit risk models and a whole bunch of other behind the scenes credit risk management that banks do for their credit card portfolios. And then funnily enough, I moved to the Bay Area to work at a company called Popsugar, which is a women's media and pop culture magazine backed by Sequoia and some other prominent VCs. Was a founding member of the growth team there, so worked as a data scientist for a couple of years before deciding to start Stilt. So if through all of this, you'll see my journey is inconsistent across multiple fields, across multiple countries. I've lived and worked in multiple countries, and none of it was materially fintech, aside from my job at Argus. But eventually, I ended up starting a fintech company.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. How was the process of coming to the United States? Was it, did you get adapted really quickly to the United? I came when I was 17, and I came from Spain originally. And it was a very interesting change, right? It was very different from what I used to be. I mean, I guess you're coming from London, it was a bit more nuanced, but how was the process of coming to America for the first time?
Yeah. So for me, I had lived in Germany and London, so I had like gotten a little bit of a taste of living in developed countries. But coming to America seemed more natural to me, maybe because I had seen a lot of American television. So I'd seen, all the TV shows and all the movies, and I was coming to New York, and many of these TV shows are set up in New York. So Friends, How I Met Your Mother, so on and so forth. That was my impression of the US. And and what I also did, I actually did a lot of research and work on US or about living and coming to New York. So I felt like I had seen I've watched so many YouTube videos. I read so many things, like what do New Yorkers talk about, where do they go eat, so on and so forth. So I didn't feel as different, or it wasn't as of a shock to me as it may have been for other folks, because I just came super prepared in that sense. Like I learned things like make fun of Canada. I'm like, I don't know why, but let's just do it, and to be a New Yorker.
That makes sense.
So that was an interesting time.
Very interesting. It seems like a lot of your journey kind of leads to Stilt, right? Like when you guys are working here, helping immigrants, it seems like you traveling to different countries and seeing many different places, being an immigrant yourself, it seems it kind of led to this point. Give me the origin story of Stilt. At what point do you realize there's an issue here, there's an underserved market, I want to help solve this problem? How did that come to you?
Yeah. So when I went to Columbia, when I moved to the US to go to Columbia, the first thing I needed to do was to rent an apartment. And I was trying to rent an apartment. I could not get one because I didn't have any credit score, credit history, no co-signers, didn't have enough money for a large deposit. So I was sleeping on someone's couch for a few weeks until I found a roommate. Which took a little while, but all the landlords were just wanted to look at my credit profile before they gave me a room. And I just didn't have any of those things, even though I was going to like a prestigious university in a good program, so on and so forth. And, I had already paid a ton of tuition there. And that was just a new, slightly different experience, even though I had experienced similar things in Germany and London, but I had, I think, more support there because there was someone, the ThyssenKrupp, for example, provided support, and then in London, the company I was going to provide the support. But in the US, there was no support, and that's where I realized like that credit is something that's important in the US. eventually I found a roommate, and just as a side note, that roommate also eventually became my co-founder.
Oh, wow.
So we have known each other for 10 plus years since I moved to the US, and he was the first roommate.
That's incredible.
He was my first roommate at Columbia. So having coming to how it turned into Stilt. So after I graduated, I said I worked at this company called Argus Information that consulted banks. I learned a lot about how banks view credit risk, and everything at banks start at FICO scores or start with the credit history. And anything without that is an exception to their policies. So their policies are just built around credit history. And we learned tales like someone had $5 million cash in their account and they still got declined for a credit card by the same bank that they applied. It's just like everything is siloed, everything is just so narrowly focused on credit history. And I took all those experiences with me. I didn't do anything at the time, but got to learn a lot about that the credit risk world, so to speak. And then I came to Popsugar, where I got to learn about technology. And I kind of married these two things to solve a problem that I faced. And the problem also came about solving because I have this idea book where I write all the ideas that I have. And one of the ideas I had written there is to just help more international students move to the US because they're hardworking, they're generally, good, that they end up doing well. And I was like, how can we bring more of these people to the US? And that idea from international students evolved to Immigrants. And we participated in a startup weekend competition. We won that competition. That gave us a little bit of confidence. Then a bunch of very lucky events happened that resulted in us starting the company. Then we just
did you have a product in mind at that point? Did you have and was it similar to what you guys are doing now, or has that kind of evolved?
Yeah, it has evolved. So at that time, we were building a risk model for international students moving to the US, so that others can lend to these students. And then it evolved to like Immigrants. And then first it evolved to, instead of selling credit risk model, we started lending our own money. So we actually, the first loans were done from Priyank, who's my co-founder and CTO, from his and my savings. And we lent our own money to strangers on the internet, but we felt strongly about their credit risk, so we gave them money. And then we got into Y Combinator, and then from there on, the idea continued to evolve. My Y Combinator pitch is still on YouTube, so I put it on YouTube, and there you'll see me talking about international students.
Oh, we're gonna link to it. We're gonna link to it. Tell me about Y Combinator, right? Coming from Europe, to me, Y Combinator, I run a bootstrap company, so it's still not super relevant, but it didn't mean that much to me as it meant to people who grew up in the States and knew they wanted to be entrepreneurs. And so that meant a lot to them. Was that big of a deal for you? Or like, did you understand how key step that was? Or was it sort of more of, they told me to apply here, and so I apply here, and I just happened to get in?
Yeah, I think after I moved to the Bay Area, I did get to know about YC, and I did get a sense of what YC is, but I think that was a very surface level knowledge for me. And I think I got to understand and learn about YC through a podcast that YC had by this guy called Aaron Harris, who was a partner at YC and ran YC podcast at the time. And the distance from Popsugar to my home was about 25 minutes walking distance. And every day, 2 times a day, I would listen to that podcast. Or at least once a day. I leave home, I'll start a new podcast at 25 minutes long, and then by the time I'm in office, I'm done. So I got a better sense of what YC is and what YC stands for and what startups are, just through hearing those stories. I actually did not know anything about starting a company. I did not know anything about what actually goes on in a company. It was just more about the YC exists, and YC provides funding to startups and stuff like it. It was very theoretical at the time.
That makes sense. Did that feel like an inflection point? Like, did that feel like it became a reality once you got accepted in YC, or How was that experience of getting there? What did that mean to you, kind
of? Earlier I mentioned there were like a series of lucky events of us starting a company. Like getting into YC and all those things are also very lucky events for us. So we started the company, and I still remember telling my co-founder Priyank that I don't think we are going to get into YC, but and this Priyank didn't even know. I think he didn't even know, or maybe he just knew as a side thing that I was doing. I thought that I'll just apply to YC, and I filled out the application on the day the applications were due. 3 hours before they were due, somehow I was on this random Slack channel where some former YC or ex-YC founder or YC alum was basically saying, YC applications are due in the next 3 hours. We are here to help anyone. We are here to review anyone's application and help them make it better. And like me ending up on that Slack channel is a coincidence, because I went to some random event that created a Slack channel that I joined. And then the second lucky event is I was on that Slack channel at the time when they posted this. Generally, and this is like a few years ago, right? Like so, and our company did not use, I think, Slack at the time. We were on HipChat. Popsugar was on HipChat at the time. So two coincidence events, and then the third one was me deciding to send them our application. The fourth one was out of all the applications they got, they picked 3 applications to review. We were one of the 3. The next thing was, out of all the applications they reviewed and helped make better, only we got in. So so that was like a series of lucky coincidences. And even that now, like after submitting to getting in, is another series of coincidences and lucky events. So we applied to YC sometime, I think the applications were due in October, and I applied, and I just like thought we wouldn't get in. YC is for like, great companies and big companies, and not us. After I applied, like at some point I booked a ticket to fly back to India for a festival called Diwali, and I generally fly back every year for this festival. And I had booked the ticket for November 6th, and then YC interview comes in, or YC interview call comes in, and the first date you can interview is November 9th. And now I need to decide whether I fly to India or I do YC interview. And this was in-person interview, not online. So I decided, what I was debating was like, it would cost me $1,000 to change my ticket for a 10-minute interview. And I was like, $6,000 an hour for an interview for a thing that we won't get into. I don't want to do it. So, but we then eventually I decided, I'm like, okay, what if we get in, kind of thing. I think I did a lot of probability calculations, and I was like, a 20% chance, 25% chance of getting in. So I thought it's worth the shot.
$1,000,
Yeah. So we interviewed, and so I booked the ticket for the night of November 9th, and I thought our interview we decided interview would be at 2 or 3, and then I'll fly at like 9 or something like that. And YC generally has one 10-minute interview, but for us they said, stay back, we want to interview you again. And then I'm like, and they said the second interview will be after all the other interviews, so it was supposed to be at 5, and now it's 5:30, 5:40. I'm like, they are not interviewing, I'll leave. I'll miss my flights and so forth. But they interviewed us, and then they told us that if you get in, we'll call you by 7. If you don't get in, we'll email you by 9 the same night. And then it's 7, and I put my co-founder's phone number, because I thought, what if they're delayed, I'll be on my flight and stuff. So after that we went to the airport, and I was at the airport. I'm waiting 7:15, 7:30, 7:45. I'm like, we didn't get in. And then I went and I got my boarding pass. And as soon as I got my boarding pass, I see a call from my co-founder. And as I saw that call, I was like, we got in. Because if we hadn't gotten it, he would have texted. So yeah, and then I flew to India and stayed in India for a couple of weeks before I came back. So,
to celebrate. I hope you ran through the airport. I hope you did. That's an incredible story. I love how it's a series of fortunate events, right? That align. Like even the fact of like going from India to Germany, and then to the UK, and then to the States. I feel like my story has also had this like lucky moments that we're just happy to enjoy. I want to bring it back because we only have a few minutes left to Stilt's mission. Because when you guys help them financially, I think you guys are unlocking something bigger than just a bank account, right? Tell me a bit more about what we're creating for immigrants when we give them access to easier banking and financing. Like, what's the actual ripple effect that creates?
Yeah. No, we have we think about these things quite a bit, and I think we are giving immigrants access to opportunity to do something big. And I'll share two examples of that. One is, I think in 2019 something or 2018, we did some research into what's the impact of Stilt loans. And one thing we saw was that we added $200 million worth of lifetime income to folks who used our loans to do something that allowed them to earn money for the rest of their lives. International graduate students not able to pay tuition or something like that. Their parents don't have money, or their parents are not able to send them money, and now they're stuck. So because of that, because of our loan, these people graduated and actually found a job because they got the right visas. And because of that, now they will continue to earn money for the rest of their lives if they choose to stay in the US. So that was one big one. The second big one, I recently saw a company or a founder who raised 75 million something Series B, or like some insane amount of money, actually was a Stilt borrower when he was an international student. So what we strongly believe in, what we are trying to enable is that creating opportunities for immigrants. And as I mentioned early on, like, our mission is to make immigrants successful. It's not just about one loan. It's about giving them the right tools or right financial support that can have like very big outcomes throughout their lives.
I love that. Yeah, and you were mentioning before that it started trying to bring more international students to the United States. I even when I was in college, I started a similar business trying to bring them more because I came through an agency that helped me out, and I want to kind of get that process better. Tell me about the benefits that the country also gets, right? Because what do you think immigrants provide to the United States that is different than what a traditional America can provide, just because of our context and our background and our experiences?
Yeah, I mean, US is a country of immigrants, but I think I was talking to someone and I mentioned that immigrants have produced the highest leverage or highest impact per unit person or per unit time compared to regular citizens of that country. And because immigrants are a heterogeneous group, they are not a homogeneous group. So they're a heterogeneous group, and they are all highly capable. Anyone who moves to a new country by jumping through a lot of hoops is highly capable and builds tries to do really well in life. That has been true. Like, and because they are not like, there is no politician representing immigrants, but if they were, and they're fewer in numbers, but their impact is material. Many companies are started by immigrants. Many big companies were started by immigrants. So they just have like a massive impact on the economy. That's first. A lot of innovation comes from them. The second thing immigrants bring is just multiculturalism to a country. And you can look at any country where there is very limited immigration and a lot of immigration. Countries with a lot of immigration tend to be more multicultural, both in terms of art, food, whatever you want to call it. So they have like a very big positive impact on that.
That makes sense. Final, and I 100% relate to that. I think that there's a competitive advantage of being an immigrant that we have. Final question, because we have a couple minutes. This is something that I like to ask. As a founder, you guys have raised a lot of funding, debt financing, team size has increased. That idea that you had that needed a couple lucky events to come through, now it's a great company growing and building an important mission. How do you deal with that pressure mentally as you guys grow and scale? And also, how do you deal with the mentally to, if you guys don't fail, there's a lot of people that are, if you guys don't make it, there's a lot of people that are affected and that need you as immigrants. How do you deal with that pressure? Because it has to feel weight on your shoulders.
I'm actually just I actually just feel fortunate that we get to do what we get to do, and it's an opportunity for us to make a difference. So I feel less of a less weight on my shoulders, but more 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 fortunate that I get to work on a company that has positive impacts on people's lives. And generally, it's for us, it's about how much can we create for others, in addition to obviously building a good business. That doesn't feel like pressure to me. Like we have to work on a lot of stuff, and I enjoy coming to work every day, irrespective of how much work there is, because I can choose to not do it any day. Right? Like I can choose not to do it anyway. I do it every day because I feel fortunate. I feel like I have the opportunity to do something.
That makes sense. And I personally love what you guys are doing. I've had problems with my credit score. Like I've been where a lot of your people that need you are, and I really appreciate you guys working on this. Rohit, we could go over for an hour, but I know we're both limited on time. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time and that what you guys are working as well.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for the invite. Happy to chat about Stilt. Happy to share about Stilt with your viewers. And if anyone's looking for financial products, if you're an immigrant, just feel free to visit us at www.stilt.com. That's stilt.com.
Perfect. We're gonna link that on the podcast description for everybody listening. Thank you so much for your time, Rohit. Thank you again.
Great. Thanks, Marty. Have a good one.